Hi everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Lead Every Day, the podcast where we just talk all things leadership related. As you know, it's Ben, I'm Martin. We'll share what we think, but we'll always start the pod by saying we'll share what we think and what we believe, but that doesn't necessarily make us right. So what's on the menu for today, Ben?
My favourite topic, feedback.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So what makes feedback your favourite topic then?
Well, we know from the people we work with, it tends to be one of the topics that they really want to talk to us about or with us about. So that's probably the first reason why it's one of my favourite topics. But if you remember previously, I've said that a really solid leadership example for me was when someone gave me some feedback that I needed to hear. I didn't necessarily want to hear it, but I feel that absolutely changed how I do what I do these days for longer term. So it really has been a junction, I suppose, in my career.
I love that. And I guess that's probably going to be, you're not going to be the only person thinking that in terms of, feedback being one of those big things that lots of leaders talk about. What sort of, you mentioned that lots of our clients talk to us about feedback. What sort of things do they say?
I mean, it tends to be rooted in how uncomfortable it can be to give people feedback, especially, and we find this a lot, right? Especially when you're giving someone feedback on how they do what they do, like I just said, a behaviour, a part of just what they might feel is their personality, right? You're giving feedback on that stuff over how their email reads,
Right.
for example, and that tends to feel more emotive, more subjective, and therefore probably more difficult for people to give those messages. And the people we work with, of course, then say it started to breed a bad feel or culture in the team. That person's been doing that thing for ages. No one's called it out. I've been there myself with exactly that. And it can be really damaging if behaviours, like you say in the book, aren't addressed. You just don't negotiate on those, right?
Yeah. I'm guessing the word itself doesn't help that much, right?
I mean, look at the look at the associations you get with feedback. You see people, like you see this outside of work, right? People, I cook a meal for someone. My dad did this the other week, for example, and I did X, Y, Z. I can't remember what it was, and he said, "Oh, I've got some feedback for you on that, son." Not talking about any of what we're doing here, of course, but that just illustrates how much of a negative, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's connotation, isn't it?
Connotation that it's got, the word.
Like I said, been leading and managing teams for 30 years and working in many corporate environments. It's almost the phrase that I dread the most is somebody from the business going, "I've got some feedback for you." I mean, for me, automatically my mind goes to, "Oh, beep, what have I done wrong?"
Brace.
Yeah, brace.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's almost one of those things, when you see that word, it sets off a load of negative connotations. I mean, from your perspective, is there anything that we can do to get over that?
There's probably one really simple thing: stop using the word. And we've talked about this time and time again. Stop using the word, and it isn't just right. Let's be really clever and get the thesaurus out and think of a new word that we can use to describe the thing. It isn't about that. It's stop the positioning of it completely. We regularly use an example when we work with our clients about someone has some toilet paper, some loo roll on the bottom of the shoe when they come out the restroom. You don't go over to them and say, could we book a room for a minute? Or we need to have a chat. You just tell them.
Yeah.
You just tell them. So it's getting better at telling people what they need to hear.
Yeah.
And getting better at asking other people for the things that we need to hear without making it a process, without making it positioned with some sort of starting of the conversation. That's another thing people ask us a lot about, isn't it? How do you start? How would you do that out of interest? We talked about the toilet roll, but in work.
That's a good question. I think I'd just tell them, because I was thinking about this the other day. we do it outside of work all the time. We just don't put a label on it.
Yeah.
So, you know, you and I went out for dinner last night. The service was brilliant, and we told the lady the service was brilliant, and we gave her a bigger tip as well as a service charge.
Mm-hmm.
That's feedback. But we didn't go to her, I've got some feedback for you. We almost said, you did this, you did this, you did this. We loved that. And we got into a conversation. But all of that is providing feedback.
Great.
And the fact that she smiled, do you know what I mean? She was, you know, it was both sides of it. And I know you know, we talk about this quite a lot. We talk about both giving and receiving it. And I know, you know, we said don't use the word, and we're now going to spend the next 20 minutes using the word quite a lot. So apologies. But I guess there's two sides to it, isn't it? You said there's that bit about how do we as leaders tell people what they need to hear, but also how do we encourage those people to tell us what we need to. It needs to be a bit of a two-way street, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess one of the things that we I'm going to say tell, we don't tell, we advise people we work with is to not leave a session or an event, whatever it would be with us, and just find the person they've been begrudging giving feedback to for decades and go and start with that. We ask people to consider getting better at inviting it than themselves first, right? Getting better at receiving it first is a good place to start. Again, you want someone to demonstrate a behaviour, you go there first.
And is there, I know we talk about this a lot. How do you do that? What's the process that you go through?
Yeah, I think, okay, there's probably three things I can think about with this. And when we say process, this isn't a process.
Right, yeah,
it's just a couple of things that I think about when I do it. So, the first one, I think we've all felt this. I think it's really unfair after the fact to turn around and say, oh, have you got some feedback for me? Because the person you're asking that from probably wasn't present enough or looking at the specifics.
And you're using the word, so it's not helpful in the first place, right?
Yeah, and that's where, unless they can really dig deep, they're going to say, oh, it was great, yeah, I loved it generally.
Yeah.
And it's just less useful. It puts them on the spot and you don't get the quality. So maybe a really good thing to do in thinking about requesting it is to give people a heads up. And this is the second point I was saying.
So how would you phrase that slight? If you were setting it up and you weren't going to use the F word, how would you set that up?
Still like the F word, by the way.
Yeah.
That's the title for a book.
Yeah, no, we're on that. We are on that. Book 2's coming.
Sorry, shameless plug there, but I couldn't help it. You set it up perfectly. What was the question again?
Sorry, so instead of saying, oh, can you give me some feedback after that? How would you phrase it? Because that might be something really useful that, to be honest, I could nick off you as well as everybody else. So.
Well, I'll take one example from Vicky, my wife, the other week. She posted a LinkedIn video about this. She was so embarrassed. But she said she asked a senior leader for their help. She said, I'd really like your help with something. And it's funny when you think about the word help, as people, we're kind of engineered to want to help people. And that feels really good when you're asked for help. You go, yeah, well, I've been selected to help.
Yeah, no, I like that.
They chose me to ask for the time. So just, for example, Martin, I'm trying to work on this thing. I'm trying to work on my brand. I'm trying to work on how the words and figures agree, how congruent I am with the slide deck that I'm presenting, and engage with the audience more. I need your help with that, if that's okay. So could you watch out for something that I do during the time that works for you, and maybe catch a why, and something that I do that doesn't work for you maybe, and then after we can maybe catch up, is that all right? And it's only an opinion that I've got of this, but for me that's tended to bring more open, honest conversation and removes the ick.
I was just thinking about that. Feels so much, I don't know about everybody else, but for me that just feels so much less icky and processy. It feels more human.
Yes, exactly that. I mean, and I suppose we've worked a little bit together on this stuff in the past, right? With asking even some of our team for a their answers to those kind of questions
Yeah.
at the end of every single one-to-one. So I said there was 3 things that I do as a process. So that's one of them. You ask for help up front, and we ask specifically about a thing, which gives them a license then that they might need to comment on that thing. And if we're really brave, that thing will be a behavioural thing.
Yeah.
Something we need to work on.
Yeah.
And I guess the last point then, I've actually forgotten where I was going with that one. It was a brilliant point though, Martin. You should have heard it in my head. It was life-changing. Asking for the feedback up front, asking without the word, being specific about the thing you're asking on. I think that's about right. And then I guess there's something else there about how you react to it.
Yeah.
Which is massive. Because with all this, and it isn't clever, it isn't process, but with all of what we talked about there to help us request it, if we then turn around and try and justify what that person's saying to us, or disagree, or go, yes, but...
I'll be honest, I have found myself doing that. Even though I've been talking about it for years, I almost find myself internally justifying it.
I mean, again, another shameless plug here, but from the 10 golden rules, you've written in there about there's no such thing as negative feedback. And there's a whole piece that's emerged from that with the work we do with our clients. It's now leading to the second book, the F word. But I mean, you've worked and honed a reaction, a summary of how people react to feedback that's just super cool to help people be more aware of it.
But I guess that goes back to your thing as well about being quite human. So, and it's not bad news, but it's almost sometimes it's news, like the example that you gave, on a previous pod, it's almost you're hearing something that you're not expecting, and that must be difficult. And I guess from a leadership perspective, we almost need to be aware that actually there is a system or a process, like we say, we do talk about it. Mm-hmm. There is a system and a process that people go through when they're receiving, but would you want to, it goes back to the, toilet paper on your shoe. Yeah. Would you want to be walking around for the next 5 hours with toilet paper on your shoe? Or would you want someone to tell you? You might be embarrassed for that moment, mightn't you? But you're not going to be embarrassed 4 hours later when you're going in and doing a big presentation to a board member and you've still got toilet paper on your shoe because somebody felt uncomfortable enough, didn't feel comfortable enough to tell you.
That's a great example. And then you think, well, I think we've all faced that scenario ourselves when you've been on the tube, you've been on a train, you've seen someone's skirt tucked in, you've seen someone with the fly down, and you think, oh my days, everyone's noticing it. But then it goes back to a lot of leadership characteristics. It almost takes a little bit of courage to be able to step up and say, by the way, and that person's going to be super grateful and albeit a little embarrassed. But it's like old adage, if it were you, would you want to? Would you want to know? And that's what, again, I still find it difficult, but when I need to deliver a piece of feedback, digging deep involves me asking myself, if that were you, would you want to know?
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier about it being directive. Tell us a little bit more. I think we're on the same page with this, but tell us a little bit more about what you mean by directive.
I mean, it's just something we speak with our clients a lot about, right? And it tends to be a bit of a bone of contention until we start to talk about what the thinking behind it is. So it's feedback's a directive tool. And what we mean by that is it isn't a conversation.
Right.
And that's why I don't know about you, but when we work with our clients, I kind of brace for a little bit there when I say it's not a conversation, it's one way. You just take a second and watch the intake of breath. Because that's quite contrary to what some people have been led to believe, including myself, which I guess is why I wasted so much of my time and my team's time trying to give people feedback when actually I was coaching. I was asking them questions about behaviour. Feedback, you just tell them about that behaviour.
I mean, again, I know we keep going back to the toilet paper on the shoe bit, but I guess if you were trying to coach them on that, you'd be there for a long time when you just need to tell them, Ben, you got a bit of toilet paper on your shoe.
It's a really interesting new fashion choice, Martin, you're going for today.
And you kind of hope they're going to work it out, but they don't.
Yeah.
In my head then, and I know this is something that we talk about quite a bit, so I'm not going to make out we don't do this already. We almost go, when we're giving people that stuff, I'm not going to use the F word, it's data.
Yes.
It's just information. Now, you can't make somebody take on board that data or information, but I'm thinking that the way that you structure it, with all of these leadership things, there's a skill involved.
Absolutely. But on data, I guess it's important to remember when we say data, we mean data as in information. It isn't just, we don't require spreadsheets and numbers and facts and figures, do we, to give feedback? So just in case anyone's sat there thinking, how do I get data about someone's behaviour? It's more just the thinking about it as information. That's the thing, isn't it, with data?
Yes, and this is the stuff that Ben and I talk about in all of our sessions on giving and receiving feedback. So if it sparks some interest for you already, please, as always, get in touch with us on all the normal challenge, all the normal channels, if even. You can tell this isn't scripted, right? Because we'd be re-recording.
I'd remember the point 3 by now if it were.
But we'll get there.
It's still annoying me that.
We'll get there. In my head, then, what's the biggest, from your perspective, and let's just see if we agree, what's the biggest challenge that you see when you talk to not just leaders but organisations? When we're thinking about their feedbacks, when they're thinking about their feedback structure, what's the biggest challenge from your perspective that they face?
So the way they structure the messages, or the biggest challenge from feedback generally?
The biggest challenge for feedback generally.
Something we see from large-scale corporates to education to third sector, it's typical. Third party feedback kills the culture that people are typically trying to create with feedback in the first. And it's a really quick way to do it.
So tell us a little bit more. What do you mean by third party?
I mean, I think we've all been in the situation where you would be complaining or having a chat about a peer or someone in your work group or someone in your team, and you're having a conversation about them, but not to them. So then you're thinking, right, that's that backbiting thing that's going on, which destroys teams, if you look at likes of Lancioni work, right? So the backbiting's going on, and then instead of having the courage and the skill, because it is a skill, to tell the person about the thing that's hacking people off, you'll instead go, oh, well, that's not our job. You should, have you told the manager? You need to tell the manager. And then you expect that person, you set them up to fail, because you tell that, you're giving that leader the responsibility to deliver the message that they've not seen. They don't know about it. So when questioned, they can't say, oh, it was actually this. So and that makes you think, well, how on earth is that expected to go right when someone who hasn't seen the thing is giving someone feedback on the thing they haven't seen?
Yeah, and then I guess it's not data then, it's an opinion.
Yes, and when challenged, I mean...
Where'd you go? Yeah.
It's, oh, well, listen, I didn't see it, I'm just telling you what they saw.
Yeah.
You know, it isn't... I mean, I think you're brilliant, but they didn't see it that way.
Yeah.
You can see it just breeds this...
I know I've been in that position. I know I've done it. And I know we talk about it. But every time we, have little sessions like this where we talk, have I done it more recently than I'd like to think that I've done it? So that's a really big watch out. And, I said I'd share mine as well. And I top 2, and one of the first 2 was third party feedback, which you've covered that. I think for me, the other thing is lots of organisations expect leaders to do it, but then don't give them the skills to be able to do it. So it's in job descriptions, it's part of our leader's role, but it's almost like we've asked them to do something without the tools and the techniques to be able to do it well, and then we wonder why it doesn't go very well. So I'm always asking when I'm working in working in lots of different organisations. What's the performance management culture like? And I think we touched on that in one of our previous pods, just talking about, is it a process thing that you're doing, or is it just part of what you do?
Yeah.
And it goes back to, we do this stuff outside of work all the time without putting a label on it, or we might give it, but we don't tell the right, let's go back to the restaurant example. If you have really bad service in a restaurant, you don't leave a tip and you don't go back. That's still feedback, but they just don't know. They're having to work it out.
Yeah.
So it's, again, another plug for the golden rules. It's just about giving people that level of clarity and certainty. You can't make someone change with this stuff, but you can give them the data to help them make a really great decision, to help them.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
I think that's a great shout about the skill. I mean, and you can still, I think people can still deliver feedback without having the skill if they're comfortable with it. But then you look at what the reaction is that it can generate from the recipient, right? I mean, I'm sure you've had feedback from in the past, like what we all have, that was given from someone who isn't trained in the dark arts of giving feedback, but they've given you feedback, and you go, actually, it was a really good message. It was delivered really poorly, but that was powerful stuff.
As always, even though it's been something that I've been talking about for years, just this conversation today has really, really got me thinking. So, from our perspective, it's over to you. Has that sparked some thought? Are you thinking about, how do I get rid of that F word and do some stuff differently? How do I structure it? How do I really start to think about, like you said, it's the most powerful tool that you've ever come across and changed the game for you. If that's something that you're thinking, I want to learn a little bit more about that, please, by all means, give us a shout. Get in touch. Before we go, what would be your final word on this topic?
I'll ask you for your final word on this topic in a minute as well. But it's easy, like I think we spoke about in a previous pod, to think about this as a dark art, or think about it as something that's overly complicated, and it just doesn't need to be. The biggest word for me, I think, is our mindset. If we think about feedback as nothing more than giving people information that we would want ourselves because it's just helpful, it's just the right thing to do, and I just need to put the discomfort aside and tell them the thing. I think if we were all a little bit better at doing that in the world of work, it'd be a better place. That sounds really grand, doesn't it?
No, but I can't. I genuinely, Ben, I can't top that. And I would go, I can't top that. And I would go, if we could all do that, or like you said, put our own, put our own fears behind us, and it's easier said than done. Imagine how different it would be. Again, we talked about it in an earlier pod. How well would we help other people to know themselves? Absolutely. Know what their strengths are, know what their areas for development are, and increase that level of self-awareness, increase that level of motivation, increase that level of trust.
Exactly. I was just, as you were saying this, I was thinking, look at the people who we have the best relationships with, and look at the kind of messages and the level of honesty and how much feedback and how sometimes raw and how direct that can be that we get from that person.
And it's not always delivered in the best possible way because they don't. But because we have that relationship, somebody said something to me once, and I love this. That they said, I need to have the relationship with them to give them the feedback. And my colleague at the time said, no, it's the feedback that builds the relationship. So who are those people you turn to and you go, tell me the truth?
That's brilliant.
And it's those people. And like with all of this leadership stuff, like you said, it's a skill. Some people are naturally good at certain parts of it, but it's a skill that you learn. And if it's a skill that you can learn and develop and become really good and adept at, it'll make a massive difference to your people. Absolutely. And in my head, that's the power of feedback.
Love that. Love that. There's a book in this.
We're working on it. We are working on it. So I think that brings us to a close for today.
I think so. I mean, I could have been talking about that. We could have been talking about that for 4 hours. It could have been 4 minutes. I'm not sure. But talking about feedback will never be something that I bore of.
Nice. And as ever, we hope you found that useful and it's sort of sparked some thoughts. And we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Eric. Bye.